Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another stream here at the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. Thank you to join us today, tonight, depending on where you are in the world. Make sure that you let us know in the chat section. We are everywhere. We are on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So make sure that you leave us a like, a comment, chat with us. We have a phenomenal guest today. And you're going to be able to ask him questions. We have an hour with him, and he comes actually live from over the pond, but he is from here. So we're going to be hearing from here and the story and the relationship that he has with, it's not over the pond. Okay, that was fake news. So let me go ahead on and fix that. But we're about to start, and we're about to bring him in, and you're going to have a whole hour, and you're going to learn why he's so special, not only to Drina and Mike, but to all of us here at the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. And welcome to another Michael S. Heiser Foundation live stream. My name is Jorge. I am your co-host and producer, but you didn't come to see or hear me. You came here to say hey to Drina. Hey. And
hey, everyone. It's good to be back. It's good to be back among you guys and to just be able to catch you up on some of the things and talk about our very special guest and have him on today. He's been a very, very good friend for years of the Heiser family, and of course through Mike first, and then he's been a great encourager. We've had so many long, deep conversations since Mike has passed away. He's been a really good friend and an encourager, and it's been amazing to watch his growth and his education and his pursuit of his PhD. And it has just been wonderful to watch him grow. And it hasn't been an easy road for him, as most PhD people that are getting their PhD. It's not an easy road. It was not easy for Mike. There's a lot of skips and blessings and step backs along the way, but he made it, and it honestly, it was worth it. And I'm hoping that with David at the end of his PhD, he'll be able to look back on that and say that too. So I'm going to read you his bio because it's amazing, and I will mess it up if I try to remember it all, but he sent me this bio, and I want you to know all about David Burnett. He is not a stranger to us at all. If you can remember early on in the Naked Bible podcast, he was a guest many times there. He was a guest at the Naked Bible Conference one year in Dallas. He was a presenter there. So he's not a stranger to any of the followers of Mike, maybe new followers, people that are just being acquainted with Mike's materials and his videos. He might be new, but you will enjoy hearing him and know why he's so special to us. So I'm just going to read this bio and then we'll bring him on. So David is a PhD candidate in New Testament and Christian origins at the University of Edinburgh. He has also completed doctoral coursework toward a PhD in religious studies in Judaism and Christianity in antiquity at Marquette University. He has been awarded participation in the Doctoral Research Scholars Program at Princeton Theological Seminary this summer, 2026. He currently serves on the religion faculty of St. Anthony's School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a private Catholic school in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, where he teaches scripture, both Old and New Testaments. For 5 years prior, David served as a religion and theology specialist for the Educational Opportunity Program at Marquette University, a federal TRIO program to support first-generation low-income college students. He has served as a graduate teaching assistant and research assistant in the Department of Theology at Marquette. He has also studied at Tanter Ecumenical Institute of the University of Notre Dame in Jerusalem, Israel, and the University of Oxford. He has a BA in Biblical Studies and an MA in Theological and Biblical Studies from Criswell College. His work has been published with Fortress Academic, Lexington Press, in the Journal for the Study of Paul and His Letters, and a forthcoming co-edited book entitled The Meanings and Ends of Monotheism in the Brown Judaic Studies series. David's research interests include early Jewish apocalyptic and mystical traditions found within the reception and interpretation of Scripture in the Second Temple period. His work seeks to demonstrate the integral role these traditions play in the study of Christian origins in the wider context of the ancient Mediterranean. The concentrations of David's research in Judaism and Christianity in antiquity include the origins and development of deification and angelomorphic traditions, messianism and Christology and apocalyptic, eschatology and resurrection beliefs. His research agenda focuses on tracing these streams of tradition in Second Temple Jewish literature, Pauline literature, and thought, Luke, Acts, and the exploration and redescription of the parting of the ways between early Judaism and Christianity. His dissertation is entitled Resurrection and the Death of the Gods, Rival Jewish Reception of the Patriarchal Promises and the Argument of 1 Corinthians 15. That was a mouthful, and I'm glad I got through it, but let's bring David out. Hi, David. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too, Trina.
Thank you so much for being here. I know I've canceled twice on you already, and David's been so gracious. He hasn't even yelled at me, so I'm glad for that. Thank you so much. So right now you're in Princeton, right? For the summer.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
What are you doing there for the summer?
Yeah, so I'm on a doctoral fellowship here this summer at Princeton Theological Seminary. They call it the DRSP program. It's a doctoral research scholars program. So doctoral students from other universities can come and study and use their libraries, write their dissertation, that kind of thing, work with an advisor here. But it worked out for me this summer to do that. My advisor that was once at University of Edinburgh, Matthew Novenson, is the Helen P. Manson Chair of New Testament here at Princeton Theological Seminary now. They stole him from us. But I was able to keep him on as an advisor, thank God. And Princeton was great to welcome me this summer, and they've treated me so well. And they put me up in a room here in Brown Hall, and I have access to all the libraries on campus and get breakfast and lunch and all that kind of stuff. And so they've treated me really well this summer. I'm very thankful.
Wow, you are really building your resume. Mike would be so jealous, those libraries. He traveled all over the place for libraries, and he would be so jealous. But he would be so happy for you.
I know he would. Wright Library here at Princeton is unbelievable. I mean, I think it's probably second in the world for what we do outside of the Vatican. So they have everything. I prided myself on finding a German book that the library didn't have, but it was surprising, honestly. My friend had told me about this source, and I was like, oh, man, I need to work with that. And so I looked for it, and they didn't have it. And I was like, what? Wright Library doesn't have it? But the librarians are so amazing here. I mean, he, ordered it right away.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this place is amazing. So nothing but props to PTS. I really enjoy it.
That's great. You're getting the tools that you really need for your expertise. But let's get back to young David and just tell us a little bit about your faith journey and how you came into this very specific, funnel of research, your interest in that.
Yeah. Well, it's a long story, but I'll give the short version or shorter version. I'll try. I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church in the South, pretty like conservative fundamentalist sort of words I didn't know when I was young. So like I guess you would call them like a free will dispensational kind of tradition I was raised in. Um, but yeah, I grew up in the Baptist church, loved the Bible, I loved going to church, was at church every Wednesday, every Sunday, all that kind of stuff. And it was a bastion for me when sometimes, life at home was difficult. So, it was good. But I got interested in biblical studies along the way. I wouldn't have called it that then, but I thought I felt a call to ministry. I ended up going to a Bible college called Criswell in Dallas, a very conservative Southern Baptist college. But there at Criswell, I was sort of exposed to the historical critical method and learned I was going to Bible college just to be a minister. I thought I'd be like a youth pastor and then a pastor, a typical Baptist type of deal. But man, I got the taste of like scholarship and the taste of like historical critical readings of the text that were peeling back the layers of like hundreds and thousands of years of history, church history and theology and tradition that starting to learn Greek and Hebrew and ancient philosophy and ancient Near East and all these things. And I was hooked. I mean, I was obsessed. I was questioning everything that I learned growing up and in the best way. And and along that journey, a good friend and professor of mine named Daniel Street had exposed me to Mike's work through a class I took. I'd taken New Testament with him a few times, like New Testament 1 and 2. Loved it. He was my him and N.T. Wright were my gateway drugs into Second Temple Judaism. That's what I like to say. And I took a class on apocalyptic literature with him, where we did apocalyptic literature in canonical and non-canonical sources, and I was getting into all this like hierarchies of the angels in these texts and stuff, and I'm like, where the heck does all this come from? Because I am not seeing all this in the New Testament or in the Old Testament. It's like Gabriel and Michael shows up and that's it. It's like, but where are all this stuff coming from? And I had done some ancient Near Eastern study in like Old Testament backgrounds classes and got really into it. And I was into all like the gods in the ancient Near East and stuff. And that's when it was in that apocalyptic lit class that Daniel was like, well, I think the background for this is like divine counsel. And I was like, what? Really? In the Hebrew Bible? And so I started to make the connections because I had already sort of known some of that stuff from Hebrew Bible, but I wasn't making the connections until kind of like late college. I was finishing up and I knew I wanted to go into like to study the Bible more academically. And I started to ask some pretty deep questions and just went down the rabbit hole, and started making these connections. So I read when he put me on the mic, it was back in the day when he just had a blog, and his blog was real popular back when biblioblogs were a thing in the ancient times, in the MySpace days, before the evil dreadnoughts of AI. So yeah, those were the days, man. So I read Mike's articles. But what really got me with Mike was his dissertation. I mean, that just like blew me away. I mean, it was a lot for me to handle at the end of college. I mean, but I was already familiar with a lot of the divine counsel stuff just through my ancient Near Eastern study. But he was an evangelical scholar who was like maintaining his faith, who knew all this stuff. And, so it was like, whoa, there's somebody talking about this and thinks that it goes all the way into late Second Temple period and beyond. And And I thought that was amazing because I had hunches that that's what was going on, but I didn't know. I really wanted to meet Mike that year. And that was
So tell us about your first encounter. Like, was it an
yeah.
email? Did you meet him at a conference? How did that happen?
Yeah. So originally it was, I think I had emailed him before I went to the conferences. It was the first year that I went to SBL, and I was still an undergraduate student. I just wanted to go and watch, and I went to the Evangelical Theological Society meeting, the ETS meeting too. That was the only year I went to that. But that's where I met Mike. I had emailed him in advance, I think. And just because I wanted to hear his stuff, and he had told me that he was given a paper on the ancient Israelite Godhead group that he did there for a while. I think that's what it's called. But yeah, that's where I met y'all. So I had gone to his paper and talked to him afterwards, and Ron Johnson was there too. And met you guys, and we were just yapping after the session, and he invited me out to dinner with y'all, and that's where I met you and Ron's wife, and just hit it off. And so it just was like, it was amazing from there. So it just, God, that was so many years ago. I can't believe how long it's been. Let's see.
A while.
Yeah, it's a long time. So, but yeah, so this is back when he was still editor for Logos, and he invited me to like write an article or two for the Bible Study magazine, and then they paid me in software, which is how I got my Logos software.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever published that article, but I got my software. Did. So that's great. Yeah, so that was fun. And then the rest kind of is history in a way. I mean, we just stayed in contact and emailed back and forth all the time, and would call and text sometimes. And I would always bounce ideas off him. And as I was developing in grad school and stuff, I had asked him to be my outside reader on my master's thesis. And he said, of course. So he was like my external supervisor there. And, he had known about so many stories. I mean, I don't know where to begin, but like we attended I attended SBL multiple times and roomed with Mike, and he was, when I was just like a poor as dirt pastor and grad student, he's like, hey, come room with me, and we would stay up till wee hours of the morning and dissect papers we heard, and like talk back and forth, and argue in the best ways, and just it was so much fun. Like, those were such formative moments, and it was wonderful. It was someone who like understood me, and I wasn't weird to him, and we were into the same things, except he was just way further along. Yeah, he was so great. And so I had become, when I was pastoring this little church, while I was in grad school, I had become a trustee for the nonprofit for Miklot at the time, it was called. And I did that for a couple years, but then so he could make me a research assistant and help me out financially a little bit with like books and stuff at SBL and all that kind of thing. Right. I came off the board and just became like a research assistant or whatever. So that was cool. And I appeared on the podcast a bunch of times. And so the podcast listeners know a lot more about my scholarship probably than a lot of people that haven't been to my papers at SBL or haven't read my articles or something. So that's really cool. I thought I'd be done with my PhD years ago, but life happens. So yeah. I had left my program at Marquette after coursework for reasons, and then COVID hits. And I'm isolated, and I moved across the country from Texas to the mid-frozen tundra, and I left the program that I thought I would, since college, I thought I would go into or hoped I would get into. And I dealt with a huge bout of like anxiety and depression, and it was bad. It was like a very dark couple of years, honestly. But I'm thankful for Marquette University's campus ministry. I still serve to this day, like 9 years later, about to go into my 10th year as a residence hall minister there at Marquette University. That's provided my living, but I love students. I've been in student ministry for countless years. And so it's kind of fun to do on the side and build relationships with students, build community, be there for them, lead like a faith group every week, and do reflection times and staff meetings and hang out with the RAs. And I'm just there for the students when they need the kind of support that isn't provided for like Office of Residence Life. And that's the beauty of Jesuit schools. They really, most of the time, they care about what a pillar of Jesuit spirituality is, cura personalis, care for the whole person, and I try to embody that in my role, because these students are not just test takers and numbers and income for a university. They're complicated individuals with their own stories and histories, and are leaving home for the first time and crying and in this new world of college. And I like being there to help walk them through those times, those very complex times.
I think you and Mike were very kindred in that. Mike saw a lot of potential in you, and he loved you like, a son or a brother. He always called you Burnett, and but he always approached the student as a human, a full human as well, not just as a paycheck or another, feather in his resume, And I see you that same way, and how you care and how you are very intentional about what you bring to your students. You're very thoughtful, and Mike was the same way. He didn't want to blow fluff or just quote creeds and all that. He wanted, the student and himself to really understand what these creeds mean. Are they right? Are they really biblical? Or are they just immersed in tradition? And that's why he created the Naked Bible podcast, because he wanted to strip all tradition, all of that stuff away, and just deal with the text and scripture. And he loved the Second Temple period, just as you do. It was very important, he felt, and pivotal to the writers of the scriptures. So you guys really had a big kindred spirit in that. And I'm just going to tell you, he just really loved you and really saw your bright future, and we're seeing that too. Your resume builds. It's amazing, David. I can't wait to see what you do.
I really appreciate it.
So the title of our live stream is that you are, well, of course, helping PhD students financially was a really big burden for Mike. He helped a lot of people just personally. And so when he passed away, I thought it was very, very important that we do something in the foundation, that we give back. And so I thought it was really important to try to support a student that was in biblical studies and was serious about it. And so you filled out our application, and honestly, you were the only applicant at that time, because I knew that Mike would have wanted to help you, and I knew we wanted to help you in your scholarship by giving you a scholarship to complete your PhD. Because listen, David, he's a one-income guy. He's not married, and he's trying to serve the Lord, and he's ministering to these students, and he's not a rich guy. And so we just decided to follow him along on his PhD journey. And so he has had 3 years worth of scholarships through the Michael S. Heiser Foundation, and we're so proud of him. And so David, why don't you just tell us about your PhD program and what you're doing right now, and what's your where the end point is for you? Like, when are you going to be done? Do you think you're going to be done, and all that stuff?
The $1 million question. Yeah, I would like to know that too. No, yeah. So like I said, I had changed PhD programs. I had taken a very unwanted couple of years off, but I switched to the University of Edinburgh to work with Matthew Novenson, and I am very, very thankful I did that. I'm very thankful for Matt taking a chance on me and believing in me and my work. I had met Matt Novenson at the Society of Biblical Literature a few years before I ended up changing to Edinburgh, coming over to Edinburgh. I think we met in the Paul Within Judaism section at the Society of Biblical Literature, and he was in one of my papers, and he was presenting in the same section, I think, and it was on this topic that I'm still working on now, and I think it was sowing celestial seed, like early Jewish interpretation of the patriarchal promises and the resurrection of the dead in 1 Corinthians 15. And so my topic's what kind of started our relationship. So he had already was familiar with my work. And it was funny. I think after the session, during the Q&A, he had asked, "Was like, are you familiar with Matt Thiessen's work? He's done a lot of work on this." And I was like, "Yes, I am." And he cites me twice in that book. It's like, so I was like, "Yes, I'm very aware of that." He helped me edit this first article on this topic, So we kind of hit it off, and he liked what I was doing, and I loved his scholarship. He's an incredible scholar, but more important for me, he's an incredible person. He's just like him and Mike have a lot of similarities in that they actually care about the human being and where they're at and what they're going through, and is all about the tip of the spear scholarship, So I look to Matt as kind of a role model of like what it looks like to be just a good dude, and then also like a wonderful scholar at the same time and well respected. And so I actually reached out to him honestly just for advice on what to do in my very complicated situation. And he invited me to finish at Edinburgh, and I said, yeah, absolutely. And it was a weird kind of circuitous kind of path, because I had originally planned on doing a PhD at Edinburgh under Larry Hurtado if I had done this Christology idea I wanted to do. But if I did Paul, I had talked to Larry already. He's excited about my idea. And I had met Larry Hurtado through Mike. Me and Mike and I went to one of Larry Hurtado's papers where I met one of my other best friends, Dan McClellan. And we got to talking with Larry, me and Dan afterwards, after Mike introduced me to him. And then Larry took me and my buddy out for a drink, and we just sat and talked for goodness hours. And so I had kind of hit it off with him. So I had already had that Edinburgh connection way back, but I told him, I was like, but if I want to do my Paul stuff, I'm probably going to end up at Marquette. I wanted to work with Andrei Orlov and Michael Cover there. And I still love them as scholars, and I think I still have a good relationship with most of them there. But, I won't get into the terrible story of why I left. But it was good reasons why I didn't want to go back, and Edinburgh became like a haven for me. So I'd always loved it. So it was kind of like a full circle thing, because Matt was Larry's replacement when he retired, and then Larry passed away as well. And so yeah, that was sad. So he wouldn't have got to know that I actually did come back to Edinburgh, and I am finishing my PhD there. So so it's been a long journey, but my topic is still the same. So it's just gotten more advanced and too long. But it's called The Resurrection and the Death of the Gods, rival Jewish reception of the patriarchal promises and the argument of 1 Corinthians 15.
Wow. Sounds fascinating. Really
Yeah.
does.
I don't know if you want to talk about that or.
Yeah, I do. Talk,
Okay.
David. I got to let my dog out of the.
Okay. Yeah. So that topic, I think most of the listeners have heard, longtime listeners of the Naked Bible podcast probably have heard some of my episodes on this, where one I did with that dissertation title, Resurrection, Death of the Gods. This is probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I can't remember. So I've been at this a long time. But it's developed quite a bit since then, and the same core ideas are still there. And I've published a couple of things along the way, So the basic premise for those who don't know my scholarship or haven't listened to episodes with me, then the basic idea is this: is that the argument of 1 Corinthians 15, the most famous passage on the resurrection in Paul, if you ever want to find a passage that deals with what is actually taking place in what Paul imagines is happening in the eschaton, that's where you go, like the end of days. That's the passage. I mean, there's no greater description of what he thinks is taking place in the end than 1 Corinthians 15. There's other passages, of course, Philippians 3, Romans 8, that kind of thing. Everyone loves Romans 8 so much, and I get it, but it's like, I want to know more about what the heck the resurrection is. What is he even talking about when he I think lots of Christians just think they know what the resurrection of the dead is about, and I don't think many of them do. Because it's much weirder and ancient mythical stuff than we often would think. And it makes a lot of Christians uncomfortable when they come to terms with some of this, if they grew up in very conservative fundamentalist traditions, because of certain views of the Bible and what the Bible's supposed to say and what it's supposed to give me. And they have their theology already made up before they ever read a text or study a text, and that wasn't me. So I had to be broken out of that, just like anybody who studies this stuff. But it's a process, right? So anyways, the basic gist is that the whole argument for the resurrection of the dead and why it's such a big deal for him, this whole bodily resurrection and a whole catena of things that happens at the end of days. The reason why I think, or what's going on behind that argument that brings about that argument, in my view, is that you have sort of rival takes on how the promises to the patriarchs are going to come true in the end. And this is how a lot of eschatology and philosophical speculation about afterlife and stuff, where it comes from. A lot of it comes from ancient Jewish speculation and philosophizing and exegeting of scriptures that are rooted in the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I'm focusing particularly on the promise of star-like seed from Genesis 15 that's repeated in the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, in Genesis 22. The star promise is repeated there. And then it's repeated again in Genesis 26 to Isaac. So this sort of threefold repetition in the narrative of Genesis is interesting, and the way that the kind of final redactors of the Pentateuch use the promise tradition throughout to say that this is coming true in the Exodus, the promises to the fathers. And so if you fast forward into the future and look forward to the time of the late prophets on into the Second Temple period, you start to see this further expectation that the promises will be fulfilled in the future, that they weren't all fulfilled back then. They still need to come true. We're still waiting on some big stuff to happen. A lot of the ways that they would imagine that would be in the way that they were fulfilled in the Exodus. So the way the promises are fulfilled in the Exodus becomes if you want to use the word typology or something like that, the narrative traditions get reappropriated and renegotiated over time. The way ancient Jews imagined the end was looking back to the Exodus. And Exodus was like a new creation. So creation and Exodus get sort of intertwined in the tradition. And you see really interesting ways that they connect that with their expectations of what they think's going to happen when these promises are fulfilled. How do we become like the stars? Is it just there's just tons of us? Or is it, do we become like them? And many ancient Jews, I actually think a majority of early Jews, thought that the resurrection from the dead was a promise of like astralization, where they used to think that stars were gods or angels. And these categories are all weird and mixed up in the ancient world. So there's all kinds of mythology about the star deities and all that kind of stuff and how they fit into the whole cosmic order. Well, a lot of ancient Jews thought that they would end up taking over the cosmos one day. And Pharisees were some of them. And Paul was a Pharisee. And the Pharisees were into resurrection, and they were into the angels and spirits and the prophets and big world overturning eschatological beliefs. Whereas, some of the Sadducees and others were not. And you see these battles break out in the New Testament. And so if you read early Jewish literature, you'll see them in texts like Josephus and Philo and elsewhere. Later rabbis looking back in time at who these Pharisees were and all this. But they're very different than the people that run the temple, and their eschatological beliefs are pretty radical. And these were very controversial ideas in Judaism. A telltale sign that people don't know what they're talking about when they talk about early Judaism is if they say, well, all Jews believed. The moment I hear that, I'm like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, because the different sects of Judaism at the time are so variegated. They're so different from one another. And the debates that were going on were so intense and exciting, Yeah. It's like you read the book of Acts and, the way it characterizes kind of Paul's ministry, looking back at Paul's ministry in the past, and he's getting it. He's using these to his advantage, in Acts, in the characterization of him in Acts, that pitting Pharisees against Sadducees, and well, I'm just defending the resurrection. We believe that, you guys don't, So this is typical, and I do think Acts preserves a good memory of tradition in early Judaism about these kinds of debates. And what I'm doing is I'm zooming in on 1 Corinthians and saying, what if we read 1 Corinthians 15 with these lenses of intra-Jewish debate about these promises of star-like seed and what it would be like? Because if you look at some early Jews of the period that are trained in Greek paideia, they're very educated, they're probably come from rich aristocracy type families, like Philo of Alexandria, for example, and his brothers. And they're all well-connected, rich, well-educated folks. And there's not one writer in early Judaism that has written more than Philo of Alexandria in the first century, outside of maybe Josephus. But Philo's written way more than any New Testament author, way more. And he's a contemporary of Paul. And I have scholar friends of mine that are convinced that Paul actually knew some of his writings and was intentionally engaging them. I could be persuaded of that. I do think that Philo's school of thought, like Alexandrian allegory, as they like to call it, is very popular in a lot of diaspora Judaism at the time, because you got to understand, if you grew up in the diaspora, far away from the land of Israel, and you just grew up in a Greek polis, a Greco-Roman polis, where Greek is still the lingua franca, even though Romans took over. They only spoke Latin in Rome and in Italy, really. I mean, it wasn't the lingua franca of Asia Minor and on even down into Egypt was still Greek, even though people spoke their own languages in different regions or whatever. But the point is, the Jews who grew up in a Greco-Roman polis may have only known Greek and didn't know a word of Hebrew, and they only knew the Septuagint, the Greek scriptures. They wouldn't have called it that, but they just knew that. And there was myths that you can find in a famous text called the Letter of Aristeas, where they would tell myths about how their Septuagint was inspired by God. They had to come up with those myths to validate their own Judaism in the Greek polis and say, hey, yeah, we might be removed from Israel and we might not be reading a Hebrew Bible, but our Bible's still inspired too, and there's the myth of the 70 rabbis who go in and, come out with the exact same translation of the Torah, it's like, see. So Hellenistic Judaism had a long history before Paul. And in Hellenistic Judaism, particularly in Alexandria, which is probably the highest concentration of Jews outside of the land in the first century. And there is, one of the hubs of ancient learning, is Alexandria. That's where, the really smarty pants folks are, right? So Philo is very well known and he's respected. And his writings are ironically preserved by early Christians. Not as much by later Jews, but predominantly speaking, by Christians. But Christians, later church fathers take Philo and read him as like the lens by which they read scripture. So all the Alexandrian church fathers love Philo, mainly because of Origen, I think. But the point is, there's Alexandrian ways of reading text that are very philosophical, very Platonic, very allegorical. And then there's other ways of reading texts, like that some of the apocalypticists read, which are that foresee an end of days, a final denouement, a final end time judgment. That's people like Paul. And a lot of these interpretations of key text, they're at odds with one another, they're there's a lot of intra-Jewish debate about this stuff. And so I think that's kind of what's going on behind the argument of 1 Corinthians 15 is you have kind of an Alexandrian school of thought about these promises through probably Apollos, who is the leader of the church after Paul left. In Corinth, and he's, talked about a little bit in Acts. But what's interesting in Acts is one of the only things they tell us about Apollos is he's an Alexandrian, mighty in the scriptures. So regardless if you want to call that history, memory, polemic, whatever you want to call that, it is important that they mention that first about him, because that's how he's characterized. So in the memory of whatever those tussles were back in 1 Corinthians 3 about I'm with Apollos, well, I'm with Paul, I'm with Peter, that Paul has to address, they were real splits, there were real arguments going on. And I think the Alexandrian tradition, I know we have texts that do this, allegorize the promises in such a way where there's no eschaton, there's no end of days. There's no apocalypse. The only thing you're worried about, the powers that must be ruled over and you must have experienced the kingdom and reign over, are really just internalized. They're like the passions and vice and all of that, so that the soul can escape the prison house of the body and go and become a star, and join the gods. And that's so you don't need an eschaton. The gods are okay, they're not the issue. The issue's inside. Whereas some crazy apocalypticists like Paul, quite the opposite, He's like, no, these gods are bad and they've led the Gentiles astray and their time has come and we're going to sit on some tribunal and judge them all. And it's like, wait, what? So these are radically different schools of thought, but they're all Jewish. So this whole notion that Jews believe this about the resurrection is it's just so myopic and wrong. I mean, there's all kinds of afterlife beliefs in ancient Judaism. I think two major schools of thought are some that we might call apocalypticists, and all these terms are problematic in scholarship, but generally speaking, an apocalypticist, someone who believes in heavenly revelation and angelic journeys and revealings from spirits and angels and all these things, and they believe there is some end of days coming, There is a telos to all of this. And then there's kind of like philosophical Hellenistic Judaism that just says, we basically believe what Plato and the Stoics believe, and we just say that the scriptures did it first. See, Moses had all this stuff before Plato and and even though they're just getting it from the Greek world, but you have Jews that are legitimate academics and brilliant and that want to legitimate their own tradition and show, because ancient Greco-Romans people really thought that they didn't like new things. They didn't like new cults. A lot of mystery cults are in catacombs because they're looked down upon if they're new. If they have antiquity and they go way back and ancient traditions of old and stuff, they love that stuff. So if ancient Jews who were trained in Greek philosophy and stuff could argue and did argue that, all these traditions go back to us, they go back to Moses. Now, were a lot of Greeks convinced of this? I don't know, probably not, but some were. Some were very convinced of it, and a lot of Jews were probably convinced that was true. But the point is, I'm trying to paint a picture of like this pluriformity that's in early Judaism, that there's lots of ways they imagine their promises coming true, and they don't always align, and sometimes they're at strong odds against each other, to the point that eventually something will snap.
Wow.
So you could argue from a historian's perspective, which is what I am. I'm a historian. From a historian's perspective, taking the theologian hat off and putting on the historian hat, you could say Christianity was a historical accident. It wasn't intended to be some other religion. It wasn't intended to be some other thing. This is just, you have apostles of a Messiah, sent ones of a king, and they're going out saying that the king's already enthroned. It's him. He's the one we've been waiting on. Whereas others are like, yeah, right. Give me a break. So, and that's the world you have to read these texts in. You can't assume all this later Christian orthodoxy and development if you want to ask historical questions of these texts.
Fascinating.
Yes.
It's fascinating. Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to be a speaker at the next conference next year in Denver.
Okay.
It's funny that you say that.
It's amazing.
It's funny that you say that because I actually just told someone exactly that on the chat. They were asking if you're going to be at this year's DCW conference. I said, Lord willing, in the next one, we'll have him. And actually, I have a question for you. I'm just going to interject because it's related to your work on episode 205 when you were talking about the sword and the servant with, and from Luke 22. I have a guy here asking right here. He said, I love that episode. Of Jesus, severity and violence. Any more plans for that line of research to go deeper into?
Yeah, that's a great question. You better believe it. I wish I would have published that years ago, honestly. That was an SBL paper that I gave and then did a podcast on it. And that, yes, I've been in. I've been swallowed up in this Paul and early Jewish project for a long time. And so I very much am going to return to my scholarship on Luke. I have done 2 or 3 papers, I think, in the Synoptic Gospels section at SBL, that being one of them. But yes, that publication will happen. But I have to get this dissertation finished.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, I will be revisiting all my Luke stuff, and I will be publishing that stuff. But I've got so much of this Paul stuff I have to finish first, unfortunately. But yes, thank you so much. I've got a lot of emails about that podcast, and that podcast. I wish people would go back and listen to the Sword and the Servant episode now, more than almost any time in American history. So please, if you are a Christian and you like the Bible and you're wondering what were the earliest Jesus followers, what are some of their positions on the state and violence and the sword and Jesus's response to this? If you want Luke's perspective on it, go listen to that episode, because I think you might be surprised in what Luke is trying to do in his passion narrative.
And what episode is that again on Naked Bible Podcast?
That is 205, episode 205. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but that's coming.
I have a question for you, David.
Yeah.
How did Mike's diagnosis and his eventual passing affect you? Like, where was your headspace and what were you thinking?
It was tough. It was tough. Because it was like my long distance family member is hurting and I couldn't be with him. And I know we talked a lot during those last days, and man, yeah, it was tough. It was tough because beyond all the scholarship stuff, and we had our disagreements and argued, but in a loving family way, like we always loved each other, and I knew that it was just about love. It was just about pursuit of truth, and we respected one another. And I always wanted to come spend more time with him during those last days, but my schedule was so insane. And when it got bad towards the end, I remember texting you and him, and I had heard back from you, and I was like, hey, can I just hop on a flight and come down to Florida? But at that point you were like, it's just family right now, David. I'm sorry. Yeah. It was within days of his death. And so, yeah, it was very, very difficult, very sad, very, very, a lot of emotions to process. But I did come up to Pennsylvania for the service. I wouldn't miss that.
And like I said, he really thought of you as a brother and a son, and he was excited about your future, and he loved the debate that you guys had. And you were always very special to his heart, and that's why we love you here at the foundation, and I love you as a friend, and we've had a lot of great, deep conversations for hours, and it's really good for me. And so you knew Mike so well, and I know that he was a mentor of yours, and he was, going with you through the Marquette whole thing that you went through, that drama, and supporting you on that and giving you advice and just telling you to hang in there, and I'm glad you have. Yeah. I can see a path for you, and I know it's taken long. Mike was 40. I think he was 40 before he ever got his doctorate, and so it took him a long time to get through.
43.
Are you 43?
43.
You've got him beat then.
Yeah, I got him beat. Yeah, but that's okay. It's all right. We all have our own paths, and mine was long and difficult. And I've failed in some ways, but I've been treated pretty badly in the past. And but you know what? You just got to get up, brush yourself off, and continue if you really love it.
Yep.
So I'm sorry I've taken so much time. I guess we should have a few minutes for questions.
It's fascinating. It's great. I don't think nobody talks about Paul enough, and he's such a huge part of the New
I don't know
Testament
about that.
and the Christian church, it's like, and so I love it. And I know that we were going to have you do a Paul's journey through Greece, and that didn't
Oh
work
yeah.
out. But hold that thought, because that is a passion of mine. I mean, I've been to Israel. That's great too. But Paul is so important, and his journeys and what he did in the church of Ephesus and Corinth and the Galatia, all of that, and it's fascinating. And I do want to revisit that and have you come as our Pauline scholar. I mean, it would be such a fascinating trip. So
it would be outstanding. I'll tell you that.
Yes. So you guys keep that in mind for a trip down the road to take Dr. David Burnett when he's graduated and has his
it's
PhD.
finished. That's right.
Yep. And we'll have a great time. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on and taking an hour out of your time. And we love you so much. And I'm so excited for your dissertation. And I just love the intentionalness of you thinking through all these aspects of your dissertation and really, letting us know that, not all Jews thought alike, just like all Christians don't think alike in the century we're in now. I mean, there's so many different thought processes and sects and of Christianity. And of course, that's the way it was in the early Jewish church. And so just, navigating all that and what Paul went up against, all those thought processes. So it's fascinating, David. And I'm just so proud of you. I know Mike's proud of you. And we're excited to see what you do next. So, yeah.
I really appreciate it. And I love you very much. And I loved Mike very much, and I miss him.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's he's inspired a lot of people to really pursue like real study of the text. And regardless of where we fell, that is absolutely the case. I mean, he's inspired so many people he's been their gateway drug into the like deep historical study of the Bible,
Yeah.
And in the best way. And I think they had a good guide with him. So,
and in his later years, he was really into studying astronomy, and he had an astral software program on his computer. He was really getting into kind of what you're explaining. And so it was fascinating to me because he was, I remember him telling me, Drina, I know nothing about this stuff, but this is fascinating. And I know the early Jewish, leaders and they looked to the sky, and I want to know why, what they saw. And
we
so
talked about
really
that quite a bit.
Into that.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm glad what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm glad I'll be glad when this thing is finished and people can see like the whole tradition, or at least the way I see it. So, yeah.
Well, that's what counts. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for coming on. And we will be looking forward to what you do next. And just keep us posted. Come on again, and
for sure.
We'll talk more.
All right. Sounds great.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Y'all have a great day.
All right, Drina, this is a phenomenal show. Everybody is saying what a great episode today. So I want to let everybody know that we have more coming. We moved to Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. Lord willing, we're going to continue to bring you live streams on Tuesdays. Pray that we can do it consistently. Thank you for supporting us. Remember that you can go to the michaelisheisserfoundation.org. You can support there. Also, if you haven't gotten your tickets to the Divine Council Worldview Conference, make sure you do. You can get them right there. And Drina, I'll give it to you so you can see us out. And I don't know if you have any more announcements to make, but here you go.
Okay, well, Jorge did mention the Divine Council Worldview Conference. We're very excited about it. And Jorge and I will be traveling out to Colorado next week to look at the facility and just to figure out the logistics of all of our vendors. We have a lot of vendors coming, and we want to just make sure that The sound system is up. The worship team will be able to bring us some great music. And this is going to be a time, it's going to be different than the Naked Bible Conference because it is going to be focused on the whole spiritual package. So Friday, we're going to have like a meet and greet with some refreshments, and then we're going to have 4 layperson papers. So these are papers that have been submitted and vetted, and they are people that are just normal, like they're not scholars, but they have some research to bring to us and they want to share. So they'll be reading their papers. And then Saturday is the main event, and that will be worship music. That will be some announcements of very exciting things we have coming, some new books. And then we will have Dr. Joel Mutamali, we'll have Dr. Ron Johnson, we will have Doug Van Dorn, and we will have Dr. Matthew Halstead. And some of them, you should all be familiar if you follow our live streams or the Naked Bible podcast or our new podcast, or if you even do the Awakening School. They are professors at the Awakening School of Theology, and you're all familiar with them, but you will get a firsthand experience and be able to meet them and shake their hands and ask questions. It's going to be such a beautiful event. So I encourage you, please, it's October 9th and 10th. Please be there. We can all meet each other and have a community of like-mindedness and just a way to connect and just have a beautiful weekend. And so, go to michaelsheiserfoundation.org. You can sign up right there on the website.
Hey, one more thing before I forget. I'm sorry because I'm reading the chat here and they always, ask questions and update. For the people who aren't able to go and attend in person, join the DRMSH community. All you have to do is go to drmsh.com, click on the community button, join up. It's $9.99. I think it's $9.99. Go ahead and join, or just go ahead and get the whole year for $99. Save $20 a year. All of that is all those resources in terms of income is what's helping us put all of this together.
Yes.
So you are supporting us. There are multiple ways to support us. You can also sign up for the Substack, right? There's some of the articles are free. Some are behind the membership option. But if you sign up for the RMSH community, you will be able to pipe in and have access to the stream. I'm actually working with my team, and like Drina mentioned, we're going to go to the church and scope it out and make sure that everything is where it needs to be so we can bring you everything in the best way possible. High quality stream, good audio, good visuals. Make sure that you can feel like you're there. So make sure that you sign up for the community. And with that being said, Drina, now we can go. All right.
Yeah. And I also want to mention, we have a book study on Thursday nights through the DRMSH community and the Substack. Right now, they're going through the Live in Context, which is the Unseen Realm study that Mike and Jonna McKinnon developed. And so that's a fabulous, fabulous primer on the Unseen Realm. And so you can join and do that. We are going to continue our book studies. So when that one's done, we'll have a new one coming, and that's just within the community. So go ahead and join that. It helps support the foundation. It helps support me. It helps support Jorge and all that he does. And it wears a lot of hats. So we appreciate that. So,
by the way, now that you said I wear a lot of hats, I had a question about the High Sarai hats. And yes, I actually talked to the local providers that are going to be doing the hats. Sorry it has taken so long. I'm really picky about merch and quality. I don't want to just sell
it'll be worth the wait.
Trashy stuff that is printed somewhere we don't know where and is good, after a wash is going to be peeling off. This is quality stuff. I actually got some samples, and we have some cool, awesome merch coming for both the channel and the community. from the Michael S. Heiser Foundation. So stay tuned. We'll have those to show you very, very soon. And with that being said, thank you, Drina, for making this possible. David, awesome, man. Keep up the good work. And for everybody on the other side of the screen, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure that you share this stream. That way we can get this message far and wide. Until the next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.